Welcome back to another edition of Senator Witkos's Veterans Corner. Today I'm very proud to be in the home of Engineman Petty Officer Second Class Bob Roberts of the United States Navy. Bob, welcome. Congratulations.
Welcome.
So, you served during the Vietnam era
Yeah.
in the United States Navy. And how did you decide that you wanted to be a member of the armed forces? Were you drafted or was it
No,
voluntary?
when I graduated from junior college in 1967, it was the draft was, as you know, going on pretty well at that time. And to avoid going to Vietnam, I thought it would be better if I could take charge of my own destiny. And so I joined the U.S. Navy. And it started from there.
So where was it now? When you signed up, where were you living at the time? In Connecticut?
No, I'm originally from northeastern Oregon. I grew up in a very small town called Enterprise in northeastern Oregon, and a population of about 1,000, mainly farming and lumber industry. And so it was an opportunity for me to both serve my country and also kind of get out of the small town atmosphere.
See the world, as they say.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how far did you have to travel to the recruitment office?
It was about 67 miles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you did your boot camp where?
San Diego, California, in July.
Now, I think the Navy had multiple boot camps. Did they had one on the West Coast and one on the East Coast?
They had one on Great Lakes, Illinois, and the one in San Diego, where I went to.
Not too bad of a place to go for
Not
boot
at
camp.
all.
I don't know how much sightseeing you got to do for boot camp, but
None, virtually none.
So you signed up. You said, I want to join the Navy. And did you pick your job that you wanted, or they
Not at that
shipped it
time.
off, or?
No.
How does that work?
They give you aptitude tests when you go in for basic training, and since I had worked with engines most of my life, you know, I scored high in the engine ratings.
Sure.
So it was a perfect match, really.
Okay, so they identified you after you went through basic training to work in, was it mechanics? Is that what they say, or
Yeah,
mechanical
engine
or
mechanics.
Engine mechanics.
Mhm.
And did you have to go for specialist schooling for that, or?
Yeah, after boot camp, I was sent to Great Lakes, Illinois in the wintertime. So I go from San Diego to Great Lakes in the winter, and that was quite a shock.
Sure.
And for what they call Engineman A School, where I learned more about the specifics of the engines I would be working on, wherever I was sent, you know, after that.
Now, my understanding is you served on a boat.
Correct.
And for the people that aren't familiar with that, what's the difference between a boat and a ship?
Well, ships mainly are on the surface, and boats or undersea boat is actually the term from the German undersea boat.
For the U-boats.
Yeah.
How did you happen to have that as an assignment? Were you asked to serve in that, or did you say,
No,
I want to go be a boatsman?
No, in Engineman A School, towards the end of the course, we knew that most of the class was going to go to river patrol boats in Vietnam. So I decided, and they were looking for a couple of volunteers for submarines. So I was thinking, well, which way do I want to go? So I chose submarines.
Okay. And there's, I guess, a sense of camaraderie. I had the opportunity to interview another submariner before, and he says you become very close with your submates.
Oh, absolutely. You grow to depend on them with your life, and they you. So it's a very close-knit, and you make friends for life in that situation because you do work in such close proximity with each other.
So where did you end up when you finished up your mechanics schooling? Did they send you right out on a boat?
No, then from there and you go to submarine school in New London, Connecticut.
New London and the Navy's famous submarine school. The home of submariners since the beginning of the submarine service. At these very piers, submarines had been fitted out for war patrols, filled with supplies, armaments, and torpedoes, so that they could carry the war to the enemy on his own home ground. I knew it would be quite a heritage to live up to. At New London, you study and study hard because there's a lot to learn. The Navy has come a long way from the days of wooden frigates and iron men.
So that's another, it was about, oh, I want to say 16 weeks, something like that, where you learn all about submarines, the physics involved with diving and hopefully surfacing every time.
Sure.
So, and they do pressure tests where you, they pressurize you in a pressure chamber, and then you duck out under into a big tank, 100-foot column of water, and it's to simulate escaping a sunken submarine.
Okay.
So that's quite a thrill and terrifying at the same time.
Sure. I guess people don't think about that you know, you are confined to a small space, and your life depends on everybody functioning together as a team.
Correct. And in most cases it works very well.
And have you seen? Obviously, you can't be claustrophobic in that type of situation.
No.
So, what was your average day like once you were assigned? So, what was the name of the boat you were assigned?
USS Halfbeak, SS 352. It was a World War II type. Guppy 2 was the model, and modified for snorkel, which we did a lot.
Now, what does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Snorkel is where you can actually run the diesel engines underwater. They stick a pipe up out of the 55-foot pipe up out of the water, and it emerges from the surface of the water, and just there's a valve over the top of the pipe.
Right.
So anytime a wave comes over while the engines were running, that valve closes to avoid water coming down the intake pipe. And so we would be able to run the engines underwater.
And what kind of engines would you run if you didn't have the diesel engines, combustion engines?
Well, in the early days, they had gasoline engines in submarines, the very early class of submarines. And they were very dangerous, as you can imagine,
Sure.
with gasoline. But the diesel engines worked very well. They were blower powered, in other words, they had superchargers on them. So they were quite powerful. They were 16-cylinder General Motors engines with supercharger, and it put out 100 horsepower per cylinder.
Wow. So were you based out of New London? Is that where you got your ship assignment?
Yes,
or
it
your
was.
boat assignment? And
Yeah.
it was moored there. And how big was the Halfbeak?
It was 306 feet long, 24 4¾ inches wide.
So say you never forget those dimensions. I'm
no,
sure.
those.
And how many men served on that?
Well, it served on the mission that you were on, typically right around between 80 and 100.
Would the composition of the crew change depending on the mission?
Yeah, it would. It would. Sometimes we carried intelligence people. Sometimes we carried sonar specialists when testing out new gear, and so it varied.
How did the Navy go to choose what boat had what assignments? Was there just
Don't really know.
how it was classified?
No, we were just told to go. We got orders to go, and I was never privy to the rhyme or reason behind it.
So when your typical day on board the boat was, what time would you wake up and what would you do?
Well, you'd wake up and have breakfast, and the food was the best in the Navy on submarines. Some surface people might tell you differently, but I can only go by what I experienced. Get up, have breakfast, and then your leading petty officer would have the jobs, or the day's jobs, laid out for you. Whether it was breaking down an engine, or repairing air compressors, or repairing periscopes, hydraulics. We did it all.
Was you typical 8-hour day or 12-hour day, 16-hour day?
It depended on if you were on. Usually we were on like 4 hours, 8 off, things like that.
Okay. And where did you sail to? What were some of the ports that you
When I
visited? Were
first
you
went
just-
on the submarine in 1968, I immediately was taken on board, and then we shipped out for Norway, or what they call the Northern Run, up above the Arctic Circle, and it was interesting because I had never seen ice form on the submarine before, and we got to visit Bergen, Norway, which was very beautiful. People were wonderful, and I can remember the very long fjord going in, the maneuvering watch you call it. You're on the surface, and very long to get into Bergen. It's a very secluded port. So that's what I remember of about that one. And then some other locations we visited were, we did a lot of work in the Mediterranean, where we were monitoring traffic coming out of the Suez,
Okay.
and that's where we were submerged for 34 days, and at a time, and we snorkeled every night, running the engines to charge batteries.
Is that submersion? Is that like a maximum, or is that?
Yeah, I think
the oddity that 34 days is a long time.
it
to be
is
under.
very long time, and in that time you don't really get a chance to really take a long shower, for example.
Sure.
So it becomes quite odorous.
Sure.
On the boat,
I can imagine it's because you can't get
With-
fresh air in.
with diesel fuel and everything else, and it's just for years after I got out of the Navy, I would put one of my Navy shirts on, I could still smell the diesel fuel.
Wow.
Diesel fumes on it. But other ports of call included the Caribbean, a lot of the Caribbean ports, St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Trying to think of some of the others.
Were you guys ever able to go up on top when you were moving, if you will, like when the boat was surfaced?
Yes, we
Or
were.
Not really.
We were. When we were at sea, sometimes we would surface to charge batteries, and we had the opportunity. When I was a young person on the boat, I was unqualified. In other words, I didn't have a specific job, as it were. So I did mess cooking, and and that's washing dishes and scrubbing pots and pans. But I also served as a lookout, and that's being up on the sail, on top of the sail at the bridge, as serving as a lookout on the surface. It was beautiful, and it was terrifying at times,
Sure.
because we ran into some pretty heavy weather in the North Atlantic.
And why would you stay up above versus going under?
Well, they were charging batteries, and if the waves were too large to avoid snorkeling, if you recall, I said that the waves
Right.
would cause that valve so they would charge batteries on the surface, and it was the boat would rock back and forth, and
It was your job to stay out there and monitor.
look for other shipping.
Did you ever, at any point, look out there and say, "What is that? Something I see on the horizon?" Or I've been on cruise ships, which was nothing in comparison. So I remember days just look outside, you could see as far as the eye could see nothing.
Oh, yeah, that was the way it was, and sure, a lot of times your mind thinks it sees something and doesn't really exist, so it was a lot of fun, really.
And what was your favorite story that if you got to see of any of your buddies that you guys would like to reminisce about your times on the boat?
Well, I think during the Mediterranean we had what's called a mid-patrol ball, and we still talk about that. We're having a reunion in a couple of months in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and that was fun because we got to dress up and do a little role playing.
Variety
And
show.
the captain was even involved, and so it was a lot of fun, and it kind of broke up the tedium and boredom of doing the same thing day after day after day.
Yeah. How often would you get new orders to do something or a new assignment? Would you wait and go and complete one and then come back to a naval shipyard and then go back out again?
Not always. Sometimes we got diverted in part, during the patrol. We'd be diverted elsewhere for a specific reason,
Okay.
whatever it was. And so there were times when our patrol period was extended, and it varied.
What was the average time that one would be out? Like folks that we interviewed a gentleman that was went to Afghanistan. He says typically 2 to 3 months,
Yeah.
and then his tour would be over and come back and he could re-up again for another one. Was there anything back in the Navy when you were there
No.
that if you were out on a mission, that's you're committed to being on the boat for 3 months, then you come back and then you might get something else, or
No, you were pretty much there for the duration. So
there's no place to go once you're on the ship,
No.
so you're on the boat, so you
No.
had to go.
no, and thankfully, the diesel submarine allowed us to go into port for fuel, to refuel. So that gave us an opportunity to see some different parts of the world where we might not have ever visited, if not given the chance.
And how long did you serve in the Navy for?
Pretty close to 4 years. I got out, I think it was 6 weeks early
Okay,
after a 4-year period.
good for you. And then did you came back and you landed in New London, Connecticut, or where did
Yeah,
you guys?
I was detached from the Navy from active duty in New London, and at that time I had met the woman, the lovely woman that was going to be my wife. So
was she serving on the boat with you?
no, no, she was actually going to school at UConn at the time,
Okay.
University of Connecticut.
Yeah.
So she had another year to go for graduation. So a month out of the service, I got a job with Hartford Electric Light Company, and I was there 40 years. Hartford Electric Light became Connecticut Light and Power, and then recently Eversource.
Right. Good for you. That's a great story. We often try to leave a little bit of time at the end to give the veteran an opportunity to send a message out to other veterans that might be serving either in conflict or just serving in a branch of the services today. And I want to give you that opportunity to right now.
Well, I just want to say that doing this program is wonderful. It allows me to get the message across that veterans are still serving. Even though they've left the uniform, they're still continuing to serve, whether it's in American Legion, the VFW, or different civic organizations. There's plenty of opportunity to serve out there, and your community needs you. So I just think it's wonderful what you're doing here, and happy to do it.
You're welcome. And you and all the other veterans, it's really a family. It doesn't matter how old you are,
It is.
or whether you're male or female. You feel embraced like you're part of the family, and I think it's such a great feeling for.
It really is. We
veterans.
really are comrades in arms, because once someone has served, they become part of the family.
Sure.
So, and we're involved every year with the Simsbury Parade, the Memorial Day Parade. It's bigger and better every year, and I've been proud to be part of that organizing committee for many years. And we look forward to seeing all the veterans out to march with us this year.
It's fantastic, and you're going to be doing your groundbreaking ceremony for the new
Correct.
Simsbury Veterans
Yeah.
Memorial Wall. I understand.
We're very excited about that, and it's something that's been 4 years in the making, and we had a few dedicated people that have worked very hard to make this a done deal. So.
That's great. I want to thank you for your service. I have a little citation here I wanted to give to you.
Oh, thank you.
It says an official statement that I want to take great pleasure in recognizing Robert E. Roberts being named the May 2015 Veteran of the Month, an honor that recognizes Bob's incredible dedication to his country and brave service in the Navy during Vietnam. It's my pleasure to give this to you.
Well, thank
today.
you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you for your service to your country. And we'll see you next week as we say goodbye to a great interview with Bob Roberts, Engineman Petty Officer 2nd Class of the USS, I'm going to get it right here, Half Beak.
Correct.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.